Hey, Brenton here from Effortless Swimming. I'm a swim coach based in Australia. And I work with a lot of triathletes and open water swimmers across the world to help them with their technique. We also run clinics in Australia. Now, in this episode of Feedback Friday, where we analyse just a normal and average swimmer, we are going to look at Jim, who's doing triathlon, and he wanted to know what can he do to get faster. So let's have a look at Jim swimming here. Now, often one of the first things we like to look at is the head position and the body position. And what you'll notice here as we look from underneath the water, that the hips and the legs are reasonably low. So he's going to be creating quite a bit of drag because of the body position. Now, sometimes people think that the only way to improve your body position is to just look down or bring your head further down. That's a part of it, but it's not all of it. In Jim's case, I think that is a part of it as well. So the head position is just a little too high through the majority of the stroke. You can see he's looking a fair way forwards and he lifts his head up quite a bit, especially to breathe. Have a look at that breathing position. The eyes are straight forwards. And if you look at from there to there, have a look at what his body does. Drops down quite a bit as he lifts up to turn the head. So that'd be the first thing that we probably want to change, is just get the head down. Okay, get the head down a bit more. Where he's looking in that 0 to 45 degree range. But being a triathlete, probably better off somewhere here. So if he were to look down and try and get rid of the wrinkles on the back of his neck, and in a way almost tuck his chin into the base of his neck, then he'll have a much better body position. Because if you're lying flat in the water and you bring your head from down here to up here, your legs are going to drop. So it does go hand in hand. So that would definitely be the first thing, is just adjusting the head position, and think of keeping the spine and the neck long. That should help bring the hips up and the feet up to begin with. Now, the other thing that I'd look to do is we'd want to sort of change how he's holding his body, his posture. If you have a look at his legs out the back, a little bit hard to see there. I can kind of see it a bit, but as we go through some different videos like this one here, you might notice that his legs, like that for example, there's a fair gap between his legs. I'm not talking about that way, I'm talking about width ways. So I think that the legs are just generally out too wide and the feet are out too wide. It's kind of like if you think of walking, you don't walk with your feet out to the side like wider than your hips. They're underneath your hips. It's sort of brought in, because it not only would it look funny, but you just wouldn't be as well aligned and connected. Similar thing if you're swimming freestyle here. You want to almost feel your inner thighs brushing together as you're kicking. So you want to bring things in together. So in together like this way, rather than having them out there, because it's just very hard to have good sort of connection through your core and your hips if your legs are out too wide. It's good to do some contrast swimming or contrast drills to help get a feel for it. So next time you jump in the pool, if you jump in swim freestyle, have your feet out quite wide, like outside wider than your shoulders. Very hard to swim that way. Then bring them in, have your inner thighs touching, and just notice how much better you feel overall with the connection through your body. And again, this is probably a good view. Yeah, see how wide that is? We want to keep that much closer in. Should almost be as though you're trying to keep like a pool buoy between your legs as you're swimming. That's roughly how it should sort of feel. So if he was to get those things right first, bring the head down, bring the inner thighs a little bit closer together there, that's going to take care of this part of the body quite well. And if that's taken care of, if you've got a good body line and you're well aligned, and there's this little bit of tautness through the body where you're holding this straight line, then you can start to work on some other things, kind of like the kick and the catch and other things like that. But without that in place, then there's a lot of moving pieces that are hard to bring together there. So that's where I would start. And if you've seen our 5 core principles, which we cover in our Effortless Swimming membership, the first one is breathe deep and relax. So we work on that breathing. If you're not comfortable with the breathing, if you're breathing short and shallow in your upper chest there, then it's very hard to swim for longer distances. It's very hard to relax. So we get that right first. I think Jim's okay with that part of it. The next thing after that is this stuff that we're just covering in the second core principle. Now, let's have a look through here. What's the next thing? Now, when he turns to breathe, okay, the next thing I would then look to do is we just want to make sure that he's a bit better balanced when he goes to get his breath. So you'll see here that when he goes to enter the water, turns to breathe, this hand drops down in the water pretty deep, pretty early through there. Now, if your arm is down in this position when you are taking a breath, it's really hard to feel comfortable breathing. You probably feel like you have to lift your head up or you have to turn a really long way to get your breath. Because there's nothing giving you balance and stability in the stroke. Whereas if you can enter the water and then before you go down, have a reach out in front. So reach forwards out in front of the shoulder. That arm sort of provides you with some lift and some balance to be able to then get the breath really comfortably. But if that arm goes straight down, then you're like, it's hard to keep the head up high enough. So what you'll have to change there is his entry. Yeah, probably his entry. Okay. So his entry and then what happens after that. So if we have a look at the entry, the first thing to enter there is just the elbow rather than the fingertips. Now, if you're entering elbow first, then at this point, like he's just entered the water there, but he's almost at full extension. So there's nowhere else he can really go apart from straight down. Whereas if he was to enter the water a little bit earlier, so yeah, get it in there. If you've got this nice triangle shape upon entry, elbow up, fingers first, that's going to give you a little bit of room to then slide forwards, reach that hand forwards underneath the water, taking some time, then you can pull through. Whereas if you're at full extension above the water, kind of like that there, I've got nowhere else to go. So that's what I'd look to change, get the fingers in first. And if you've been through our 5-day catch challenge, the first thing we work on there is the entry. Because if you get the entry wrong and you're entering elbow first, then it's really hard to sometimes get a good catch because you haven't set yourself up in the right position. So that's we'd want to get that entry right. Entry and then reach. Now, for a lot of people that I've worked with, there's sort of two things that have helped them keep that arm out in front longer. Right here. Keep the arm out in front longer while they're taking a breath so the arm doesn't just drop straight down. Those two things are fingers to the front. So cues or trigger words are really good to help remember or keep something really simple. So when you enter the water, think fingers to the front every time you go through it. Because if you have fingers to the front, you're actually reaching forwards before you pull through. Now, it doesn't have to be a long time. We don't want to hang out and stop and pause and do nothing. Just keep it moving through, but keep fingers to the front for a little bit as you're going through the stroke rather than fingers going down straight away. So you can keep fingers to the front. That's a good trigger word. The second thing is some people need to feel like they're reaching out for twice as long as they should. They've got to exaggerate how long they feel like they should keep their arm out in front there in order to just make that change. Because with many things when you swim, it's got to be overdone to change it. Most people don't do enough of the thing they're trying to change to actually make a difference in their stroke. They're trying to change it by 5%, 10%, and often it's not enough to actually see a difference in the stroke. All right, so that's the second thing there. And all these things we're sort of going through are in that order, the 5 core principles that we cover in the membership there. Now, the next thing after that, I would be looking to, then kind of just work a bit on the catch and the pull. Now, there's some parts of the stroke here where he's setting himself up pretty well. Like through the middle part of the catch, like from about like here on his left arm through to there, that's looking pretty good. And then once he gets to here, so about like here onwards, like got a nice sort of pretty good power diamond through there and through there, that part's looking pretty good. But if he can get a good catch, set himself up from the start of the catch through to the whole movement of the catch, that's going to make a big difference. So what's he need to do? Well, let's have a look. So the hand enters there on the left side, reaches forwards. Okay, good. Now, what we want to just avoid here, and it's probably shown a bit better on some of these other strokes, is we want to avoid the fingertips coming up above the wrist and the wrist below the elbow. Now, you might look at that and think, like, that's pretty much right, isn't it? It's a very minor difference, but it really helps if you can get fingers below the wrist below the elbow, that very slight and subtle downwards angle there. Because as soon as you drop the wrist when you swim, you've halved your paddle. So rather than having your hand and forearm as your big paddle, it's a whole thing that you're working with. If you drop the wrist, well, you've only got sort of half of that paddle to work with, either this or this. And often it's neither, because it's hard to sort of hold the water if you drop your wrist there. So we've got to try and keep that flush, keep that straight through there. We call that keeping the wrist slightly elevated, not elevated like that, but just slightly up so you can work with that whole thing. But you do see as he reaches forwards here that there's a little bit of a drop of the wrist. The fingers are up a little bit too high. So if he can enter, finish reaching forwards out the front to get the start of the catch there, with fingers below wrist and wrist below elbow, very slight downwards angle, then he's going to be able to go through the catch a little bit easier, a little bit better. Now just see if I can find a better angle for some of this stuff, just to show you the catch. And look, you can see it there as well. Okay, that's a good angle. You can see we've got this part of the arm, and then that wrist is dropped. It's like if you were to do front scull drill, where you're sculling out the front. As soon as you drop the wrists, you end up sculling this way, and you end up going backwards. So it's almost like propelling you in the other direction when we do drop the wrist there. So that's why I want to keep it forwards. Now with the catch, so there you'd say the way we define, am I getting a good catch? We look at, if we draw a line from your shoulder to your fingertips, if the elbow is above that line, that would be a high elbow catch. And that would look a little bit like this. That's a high elbow catch. So not elbow near the surface, it's more like elbow forwards. So with that position there in a high elbow catch, then your hand and forearm is angled much better to press back, and that is what moves you forwards. With Jim here, you'll see he's in like a straight position. So he's not dropping his elbow, he's not doing this, he's not pressing straight down through that part, which is good. He's pressing back in that direction, which isn't too bad. But over time, if he could get a better catch, doesn't need to be extreme. Don't think like 90 degrees, Olympic level catch. You don't need that. Just anywhere in that range, that would make a big difference. But we want to get those other things right first in order to be able to do that. And then on the left-hand side, similar thing. Yep, there as well. It's probably in a slightly drop position. So the 5-day catch challenge is great for that, but sometimes you need to get those other things right first, like head position, posture, how you're sort of holding your body, and a couple other things right first to really be able to make a difference with what's happening through the catch. So check out our 5 core principles. I'll put a link below where you can see a little bit more about those, and we cover that inside the membership. So you can see all the drills and the exercise videos there. So thanks for sending this in for Jim. But if you're working on your stroke, keep it simple. If anything here applies to you, you can focus on it. But I find sometimes people are focusing on too much at once. 1, maybe 2 things is all you really need to do, and make sure it's actually relevant to you. So if you've got the opportunity to have someone film you, even with the phone above the water, you probably start to get a really good idea of what you're actually doing in the water when you're swimming as you watch through these Feedback Friday videos. So I'll put a link to the playlist of all of our Feedback Fridays. That'll give you a great sense of what to do. And if you are following our 5 core principles in the membership, then you can just go through those one at a time. You can follow through the drills and the exercises to make sure those things are in place, and just kind of like tick those off as you go. So thanks very much for watching. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I'd love it if you could subscribe and share this with someone who you know is trying to improve their swimming. That would be hugely helpful to us to get the word out. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.